Yes, you. I'm talking to you. What would you do if the Earth were undergoing a global collapse? The only possible chance to survive would be to board a ship and travel frozen for 3,000 years to another planet. But when you finally wake up, the ship is destroyed, and you are the only one left alive. And to make matters even worse, you end up landing on a planet overrun by aliens that want to devour you. Man, to be honest, this work kept me hooked from start to finish. If you, by any chance, enjoy science and suspense, then you will like this story. It is a bit complex. So, to understand the video topic, keep your eyes glued to the video. And please go ahead and hit the like button and leave a comment, because it will inspire me to bring more videos to you. The story begins with the mother ship, called Atalanta, being destroyed. Our protagonist is named Dong, and he was recording a diary. He tells humanity, if it still exists, that the colonizing ship of the Arcadia mission ended up exploding. This mission had the purpose of saving humanity by transporting it to another planet. However, something happened, and the ship exploded. Earth had become uninhabitable, though the reason for that will be explained later. Because of this, several colonization programs were created. The destination chosen was planet Kepler 3265, and the code name for this planet was Arcadia. But something mysterious happened to the ship that carried the enormous crew. All the crew members were in hibernation, and the only survivor was our protagonist, Dong. He had no idea what was happening and was now drifting lost in space. Recording his final message, he hoped his voice would somehow reach Earth. The poor guy had just woken up from 3,000 years of hibernation and didn't understand anything. He even thought this would be his end, drifting through space forever. However, he ended up seeing his guitar. Each crew member was allowed to take one personal item, and that was the one he chose. If by any chance this truly was the end, he wanted to spend his final moments with his guitar. His dream of being in a rock band had never taken off, and he never imagined that, instead of a rock star, he would become a man lost in space. There was no air out there, so no one would hear the notes he played. But let's be honest, this would be a pretty philosophical ending. Right when he was about to give up and die in space, he receives a warning on his suit. The escape capsule had been activated, and he could flee to the nearest planet. Fortunately, this capsule was headed in his direction, so he wouldn't die floating through space for eternity. The Atalanta escape capsule reaches him and manages to rescue him. He crashes hard inside it, and after pulling the lever, he could save himself by landing on the planet right below. This meant he was giving up on his companions. It wasn't certain that everyone had died in the explosion, but he wasn't going to risk waiting. After pulling the lever, the ejection ship headed toward the planet. This was his last chance to survive, and within moments, he landed on an alien world. The ship deployed parachutes and slammed into the ground. He needed to scan the air to see if it was breathable. After kicking the door several times, he managed to open it. He was still dizzy from having been frozen inside the ship for 3,000 years. But the place looked like a paradise compared to the hell of planet Kepler 3265. Maybe this was a better destiny for the Arcadia mission after all. He activated his emergency radio, trying to contact any crew member or android from the ship. The temperature was 23 degrees and the oxygen level was 12%. In the distance, he saw someone wearing an alien suit. The outfit looked very similar to the uniforms of the Atlanta crew, so he assumed it was a companion. But then some slime dripped onto his visor. It was saliva from a giant alien monster that was about to attack him. The claws swung toward him, and he dodged at the last second. Dong was thrown to the ground. He still wasn't used to the gravity and now had to face a creature 10 times his size. Logically, he had received training to deal with this. After all, our protagonist was an elite soldier. You'll see. The monster had red eyes, and Dong stood ready to counterattack with a small weapon in hand. The little knife didn't look like it would help much, but it was his only option. He wasn't going to stand still and wait for death. Facing the creature head-on would be too hard, so he jumped. A smarter, more strategic fight would give him a better chance. Because the gravity and air pressure were different, he couldn't react fast enough to dodge an attack. With its tail, the creature began tossing him from side to side. In moments like these, he needed to break free or risk fainting. He threw himself upward and managed to land on the creature's head. This guy was truly brave and immediately stabbed the monster with his knife. For most creatures, the weak point is always the eyes, and he knew that's where he needed to strike. He delivered his strongest attack, making the creature scream in pain. During the movement, the monster's claw came crashing down toward him, and he was crushed beneath it. His luck was that the spacesuit was resistant. Another soldier appeared, aiming a high-precision rifle. After locking onto the target, he fired an energy beam that caused massive damage to the creature, almost enough to finish it off. It even seemed like this soldier already knew the monster's weak spots. After firing, he charged at the creature and transformed the rifle into a giant sword. At that exact moment, the monster tried to defend itself, and with the sword in hand, the soldier struck. With precise timing, he sliced the creature's legs in half. And now, with its mouth open, it was the perfect opportunity to deliver the final blow. When he pulled the trigger, the explosion erupted, finally eliminating the monster. When it collapsed, the creature caused a small tremor due to its enormous size. Watching the scene, our protagonist realized that the soldier wasn't a crew member from his ship. This was an alien from the planet. So he raised his hands in thanks. He didn't know whether this alien would be friendly or aggressive. He kept making a universal peace gesture. He even dropped his knife, showing he meant no harm. The knife hit the ground, and the soldier spoke in an unknown language. They really did look very similar to human beings. Dong decided to show his face by opening his visor. It was his way of sending a message that even though they came from different planets, they were similar. At that moment, we see that the alien is a woman. She understood his gesture, put away her weapon, and also decided to reveal her face. Dong grew anxious, and when she removed her helmet, we saw that she was an extremely beautiful alien. I'm telling you, the women in this story are absolutely adorable. The author really nailed it. This girl had just rescued Dong from a gigantic monster. He didn't understand why she had done that, and even less why that creature had attacked him. The girl was handing him a bottle so he could drink from it. He looks at that container, unsure whether it was safe. His suit runs a scan and detects that the temperature is ambient, and that the atmosphere around them contains a lot of ethanol, hydrochloric acid, and methanol. The girl draws a water molecule in the sand and keeps repeating the word, Kai, while pointing at the drawing. He quickly realizes that she was offering him water. But would it be safe for him to open his suit, even briefly, to drink it? During training, he had learned that he should try speaking English with beings from other planets, since it was considered an easy language. So he thanks her in English, not in Korean, and introduces himself, saying his name was Dong Yeongsu. The blue girl didn't understand that language at first, but she quickly began catching on to the words he said and started repeating them. Another thing he had learned was the universal gesture of shaking hands. Right after that, she led him to her vehicle. The beings on this world had advanced technology, and she was carrying that monster in the back of her car. While talking to the girl, he discovered that the planet was called Bumi, and the intelligent species living there were known as Bumians. The place was extremely beautiful, and it seemed these Bumians were peaceful and clever. Besides that, the climate and landscape of the planet were gorgeous, but they would be destroyed in 5 years. Our hero had barely left Earth, a doomed planet, only to arrive on another one that was also about to be destroyed. During the ride with the girl in her car, he began recording a voice message. He was documenting every moment on this new planet and learned from her that the remaining time here was very short. They reached a tech base and parked the vehicle inside. Then they went up a ramp leading to the upper compartments. Their dialogue was difficult, so he still didn't fully understand the whole destruction situation. When they arrived, the gates opened, and inside the base there were giant mushrooms everywhere. The girl walked over to another platform and, holding something that looked like a phone, she said a few words. Dong was trying to learn her language and kept repeating what she said. It seemed the planet had suffered a recent catastrophe, and he was trying to figure out her explanation. After a while, she began cleaning the monster. The creature's skin was incredibly thick and heavy. Inside it, there were some valuable parts and others not so valuable, and some of them needed to be removed and thrown away. The mushrooms were carnivorous feeders, which was completely new to Dong, who kept recording everything in his virtual diary. It was the first time he had ever seen a mushroom eating the flesh of a monster. Until then, he had only been watching, but he eventually decided to help her. After offering assistance, she pointed to show him what he needed to do. Another tactic was giving a thumbs up, but in some cultures that could be offensive. Our protagonist grabs a few of the creature's legs, and she thanks him because the task had been exhausting. After a while, they finally finished dividing the creature. They had only spent a few hours together, yet she was already able to speak a few words in English. They both thanked each other for the help, but since those were the only words they mutually understood, an awkward silence followed. She climbs down from the truck and says she's going to get something. After returning to her machine, she begins saying that she wants to learn English. Dong assumes it must be some sort of computer with artificial intelligence. She was picking up the human language extremely fast, and all that alien equipment immediately drew his attention. Sitting on the table were some stone sculptures. He thought they were beautiful and asked if she had made them herself. Once she noticed he was looking at her sculptures, she got startled and quickly snatched them out of his hands. In an adorable and funny way, she tried to hide them so he wouldn't see. The guy already starts wondering why that seemed to be such a sensitive issue. He also realized that the Boomians were all a bit clumsy and shy. During his training to become a colonizer, he learned that he should try to build connections with the natives. One recommended method was to show a smile. He even attempted one, but ended up making a frightening expression, which scared the girl. Apparently, being frozen for 3,000 years didn't do his facial nerves any favors. Another tactic was giving a thumbs up, though in some cultures that might be offensive. So another gesture he could use was forming a heart. Even though the heart shape is symbolic and doesn't resemble the real organ, he still tried it, and the girl seemed surprised as if she recognized it. Then he made the heart sign again and pointed at her sculpture, signaling that he liked it. The Bomians were very intelligent, and she immediately offered her little figure to him. With blushing cheeks, she said it was a gift. Those sculptures were called Blaya, and it looked like a small pig. He told her she was very talented, which left her embarrassed. Right after that, she pronounced his name. She pointed at her table, showing other sculptures she had made. When she reached the table, she became very excited and even activated a projected image, showing what these creatures looked like in real life. At that moment, he understood that Blaya wasn't the sculpture's name but the animals. Excitedly, she showed more sculptures and the images of the creatures. Dong recorded everything in his virtual diary because the animals were very different from those on Earth. Meanwhile, she kept showing all the sculptures she had crafted. She was saying many words, none of which he understood. Comparing them to the monster that had attacked him, he noticed they looked entirely different. It seemed that monster wasn't native to this planet. She asked him why he looked thoughtful, and because he knew she liked animals, he decided to show her some pictures. If there's one animal almost everyone loves, it's the kitten. He immediately showed her a picture of his pet. In the colonizer course he took, they told him to use English when talking to aliens and to find something in common to build friendships. That's exactly what he did by showing her animal photos. The girl had learned the word cute, and she began repeating it non-stop, saying the cat was cute. She repeated those words like a child, and our hero said he would teach her more vocabulary. He actually felt happy because he had assumed he would be the last surviving human and would have to spend his entire life alone. It turned out our protagonist liked the girl so much that he kept showing her videos of his cat. But there was something he liked even more, his guitar. He asked Longut to wait a moment because he was going to get something. After so many exchanged words, he finally learned that her name was Longut. After a few seconds, he returns with his guitar, surprised that it hadn't broken. He repeats her name, leaving the girl startled and speaking in English, and very slowly, he says that he likes music and asks if she knows what music is. At that moment, he begins to play the guitar. A robot approaches at high speed, repeatedly calling out Langut's name. The girl turns toward the robot, who arrives in a desperate state, bringing urgent news as if something dangerous had happened. Our hero was trying to serenade the girl, but he's interrupted. The robot tells her that her father has been poisoned. Shocked, she asks where her father is because the robot was frantic. The little robot couldn't articulate properly, and we see that the man had turned red. Our hero didn't understand the alien language, but he figured it had something to do with someone or some danger called ingress. Without thinking twice, they run toward the location. The base was huge, and it took them some time to get there. It seemed like the door could only be opened from the inside because it required a password. Or maybe the door was simply stuck. That seemed to be what she was trying to do. Contact her father. But she wasn't succeeding. Even after using all her strength, the door didn't move at all. When analyzing it with his suit, he noticed that the door's track was damaged. Perhaps a very strong impact had hit the door for that to happen, and the desperate girl kept trying to force it open. Since they were smaller than humans, they didn't have the strength to do it. The little robot says it would be impossible to open the door with just their hands, and it seemed like they had the antidote for the poison, so it decides to give it to the girl. Dong asks them to step back. The guy was an elite soldier, and his suit was extremely advanced. Using it, he managed to break the door, allowing them to enter quickly. The girl's father was lying on the ground, very weak and with a reddened body. She screams the name Ingress, and besides turning red, he was also releasing pink smoke from his mouth. Next to him were some capsules leaking a reddish liquid. Dong assumes it's some sort of hormone the Boomians used. She calls the little robot, who goes to her backpack to retrieve another device containing a blue liquid. Watching the scene, he suspects the liquid is a stabilizing hormone. She shakes the capsule and places it onto her father's stomach to release the medicine. The liquid is injected into his body, gradually bringing him back to his natural color, light blue. The girl asks if her father is okay, and he says yes, but then notices there is an alien race inside his base, staring suspiciously at our hero in that strange suit. Dong listens to the father and daughter's conversation without understanding any of it. It seemed like the man didn't feel safe with him, since from the Boomian's perspective, he was the alien. To Dong's surprise, these people had the technology to build robots with artificial intelligence, and the little robot asks him to follow it. These machines could learn languages more easily, but learning a language from another planet wasn't simple. The robot wanted to show something and begins pointing at a screen, saying its name was Hai. Dong responds that it's a pleasure to meet him. Instantly, Hai learns to speak English and starts explaining a bit about the planet. Pointing at images with its arms, it explains that the planet was called Boomi, something our hero already knew. Then it says the planet will be destroyed in about 5 years. The star they orbit is called Paeon. But the robot's English was still rough, so it was hard to understand what it meant. After a while, Dong understands that there is a meteor named Ragbat, and that meteor is connected to the destruction of the Boomian people. He assumes the meteor is what will destroy the planet. The girl arrives with her father, now recovered. The little robot explains to the man that the alien's name is Dong. The man introduces himself as Ingress. The meteor story immediately grabs Dong's attention, so he asks whether what the robot said was true. The man explains, though with some difficulty, that the meteor fell on the planet. The explosion had been enormous. At that moment, our protagonist becomes even more confused. It was hard to tell whether the meteor had already fallen or was still going to fall. The girl hands him his guitar. The robot realizes the human isn't understanding and keeps drawing a circle, representing the orbit of Boomi around its star. The planet takes one full cycle to complete its orbit. In other words, they had 5 years of life left because that's the time remaining before the meteor impact. The meteor would fall on Boomi and destroy everyone. Panicking, the guy finally understands exactly what they meant. Dong had escaped Earth, survived an explosion on his ship, and now landed on a planet that would also be destroyed. In the end, maybe he should have stayed on Earth. The scene then cuts to a character waking up, completely confused. A robot appears and tells him to gather his belongings, saying it will help restore his memory. He didn't understand where he was or who he was. With the guitar in hand, he wondered why he had it. Strangely, he could play the notes perfectly. The only thing he remembered was the music he used to play. He begins recalling himself playing guitar alone at the Houston Space Base. His friend was named Dean, and he had the dream of joining a band. His friends sang with him and they streamed their performances online. Dong's dream was to play in a band before an audience of 100,000 people. Every time he dreamed of it, he felt happy. The robot returns, asking him to state his name, rank, position, and mission. This was our hero, Dong Yeongsu, chief of the maintenance section aboard the Italian ship. The robot recognizes his name and mission and asks for the designated code. He spells the word rockstar, and we return to the present as he recalls that moment. His mission had been to keep the ship safe and protect his team. But he failed in both since the ship was destroyed and his teammates are missing. However, the ship was too large to be completely destroyed, and it might be the key to finding them. So he confidently says he won't let the Boomas die. This story is about to get even more intriguing, so be sure to leave a like and a comment. While reading this, I couldn't stop theorizing about what happened to the ship and where his companions might be. Our hero thought of an idea to save these people. He starts searching through the books he kept in his bag. The robot reads all the information it finds, trying to learn more about human language. What Dong really wanted was a book about the ship. The robot eventually discovers some interesting information. There were some letters with images, and he began teaching the robot a few words, and everything that was spoken was stored in the machine's memory. The Boomians watched nervously, since this human might be the key to saving them. And while everyone was anxious, the robot was learning how to read. It would be important to teach the robot English so it could communicate better with the Boomians. So he starts repeating the words and making gestures, and the robot understands everything perfectly. After just a few moments, the little robot says it has learned and begins reading the contents of the book. Hyge, being very smart, starts flipping through the pages quickly to read all the remaining content. Our hero watches silently, and within seconds the robot had gone through every page. Now speaking perfect English, it says it has understood all of the human gamma structure. Then Dong says he can explain things properly and that he knows a way to destroy the meteor. He couldn't pilot the ship far enough to escape, but the ship itself could cause an explosion. If they were able to locate the ship, they could launch it toward the meteor. The girl's father was listening to everything, and the robot says that Ingress is curious about this method. Holding a chemistry book, he decides to explain, though it would be a bit complicated to go through all the basic physics with them. So he looks for the periodic table and explains how the elements work. Next, he explains everything in detail to the little robot. It would be important for the robot to learn about that. And finally, the most essential part would be oxygen. 2 hydrogen molecules and 1 oxygen molecule made water, and the robot says it already knows that. The guy is surprised, since it seems the people of that planet already have knowledge of chemistry. But there was something called Appleton that humans had discovered. The little robot becomes curious and begins reading that information. It was the famous dark matter. This substance couldn't be detected with light and only reacted to gravity. This fact makes the robot even more curious. It didn't matter if they didn't understand what dark matter actually was. What mattered was that they could use it to save the planet. A flashback appears, showing the time before the space mission when they discovered how to use dark matter. Some scientists were observing the explanation. With this new discovery, intergalactic travel would become possible. The greatest challenge for these trips was fuel. However, space was full of dark matter, meaning they could refuel the ship during the journey. They even show a prototype engine that used dark matter. It was only the initial design, but it already gave them an idea of how it would function. Dong, our hero, was the maintenance chief. After greeting the engineer, they moved to the next part of the explanation. The students were learning these concepts so they could become colonizers. That was the symbol of the Italina, the ship meant to save humanity. To become colonizers, they had to follow strict rules. The guy asks what missions were written inside that notebook, and the other explains that it's the sequence for the ship's self-destruction. This information frightens him. That ship had an antimatter bomb far more powerful than all the bombs on Earth. This was because Arcadia was a planet similar to Earth and possibly home to intelligent life. Maybe they had evolved in the same way some scientists believed humans had evolved. And if by chance those aliens posed a threat to humans, the ship would be detonated on the planet. That would be necessary to ensure that humans wouldn't be hunted by those aliens. Dong's mission was exactly that. If the aliens proved dangerous, he could use the ship to blow everything up. The little robot becomes scared, saying it would be dangerous. But the man, who also appeared to be a scientist, sees a glimmer of hope in this idea, going against what Ingress believed. Hyge thinks the human is not trustworthy and hears the little robot whisper something in the alien language that suggests Dong could be evil. That was truly a frightening thought. So they begin discussing whether the plan was actually a good one. After all, our hero could be tricking them just to find his ship and then use it to blow up the entire planet Bumi. However, after thinking for a while, they decide what they will do. Our protagonist confirms he wants to find the ship's engine together with them. The group asks why Dong revealed all this information, and he explains that he needs allies. So he decided to tell the truth. He wanted to use the power humanity possessed, and he would use it to save Bumi. He extends his hand and says that if they accept the deal, they should shake it. Naturally, they are suspicious of him, but eventually they shake his hand because they have no other choice but to trust him. It would be a risky mission since the ship was in space orbiting the planet. Everyone holds his hand. It would be a difficult journey, but they would need to believe. The little robot says it didn't understand the man's last words because they weren't in its dictionary. He repeats that he will do everything he can to save the planet Bumi. It seems the robot was simply testing him to see if he was lying or not. And so the little robot agrees to help, placing its small hand with theirs. The first mission would be to track the ship and then figure out a way to reach it. The scene shifts back to the time they were receiving training, and the doctor said the trip would last 3,000 years. The students paid close attention because this mission was extremely important. When they arrived on the other planet, humans on Earth might already be extinct. And if they were still alive, they likely wouldn't have the technology they had at that moment. It was crucial that the humans sent on the mission were thoroughly trained because they would represent the hope of humanity. And with the book in hand, he said that everything they needed to learn was recorded there. Our hero reread that book and wrote down important information. It felt as if that training had happened only a few days earlier. Everything remained fresh in his mind, and he knew he would need to modify his suit. Ingress was a mechanical scientist and could make the necessary adjustments. That suit was built for space, not for resistance combat. Besides, his body was not adapted to the planet, so the suit would need powerful batteries. To achieve that, they would explore planet Bumi in search of technology that could help locate the ship in space. The little robot suggests attaching a respirator directly to the helmet. In addition, this modified helmet would make it easier to use the booming weapons. The scientist says it's possible but wants to analyze it more carefully. That helmet had communication features. It was a part they would no longer use, so they could remove it. The suit also contained water tanks to regulate temperature. If he stayed too long without the suit, a buzzing would start in his ear. This happened because he still wasn't fully adapted to the planet's atmospheric pressure. That huge pressure difference caused dizziness and nausea, and if he were exposed for long periods, the consequences could be serious. By removing the suit's backpack cover, they could see the oxygen tank. It would be possible to keep refilling the tank using the planet's own oxygen, but for that, some modifications would be required. Meanwhile, he would use a temporary respirator. The next step would be finding a base with better equipment to locate the lost ship. Until then, he needed to keep doing physical exercise. Being frozen in hibernation inside the ship for so long had left his body weak. Besides, this planet only had mushrooms for him to eat. Eating those mushrooms was fine, but they weren't very nutritious. Ingress warned they could even be dangerous if not prepared correctly. So he boiled them first and then steamed them. They were already used to eating only mushrooms, and maybe that was why their bodies were weakened. In any case, he would need to worry about his long-term health. Along with training, he should search for other protein sources. Their biggest enemy so far was that monster they called Jarita. These creatures ended up on the planet through meteors that had fallen a few decades earlier. He had already realized they weren't native to this world. The robot explained that those monsters had fought the Boomians and lost the war. After that, they multiplied and spread across the whole planet. Since they were a threat, Dong asked the robot to teach him how to defeat the Geras. First, he would need to destroy their vital organs like the brain, heart, or lungs. However, because they were similar to vertebrates, they were tough. The robot confirmed this, saying their shells were extremely resistant, so they should use Boomian weapons. The weapon called Naga was an electromagnetic spear capable of releasing lightning. It wasn't very difficult to use, and Dong had military training. The real issue was when those monsters attacked at close range. Lan Gut would help him train in hand-to-hand combat. To do that, she put on a respirator, and after inhaling the gas inside it, her body began turning red. His suspicions were right. The Boomians inhaled hormones to increase their strength. The Naga weapon could fire 4 times consecutively and could also transform into a sword. When it switched into melee mode, it could be used both defensively and offensively. When an attack came from above, she demonstrated the stance he should assume. And look how muscular this girl is. Tell me you wouldn't want a physique like that. The robot explained that the weapon must be used at the correct angles. If the attack descended from above, the blade should be pointed upward. But if the attack rose from below, then the blade had to be lowered. The girl then called Dong for a training session. He began copying her movements. Then she struck his weapon and he managed to block it. The pressure he felt from that hit was enormous. In a real fight, he would need to react fast. After understanding the principle, he asked if he could try attacking as well. In a combat stance, ready for the duel, she told him he could go all in. Now the training was about to get serious. She charged forward with the blade in hand, and even the robot seemed worried they might get hurt. She tried attacking from the side, and he blocked her with the weapon. Because she had taken that hormone, her attacks were like the charge of a rhinoceros. She wasn't going to hold back. Later, he wrote in his virtual diary saying that the Boomians grew stronger whenever they used stimulants in battle. One section of his daily log he dedicated to recording his songs. According to him, this was important because even on the golden record sent on the Voyager, they included music. For those who don't know, that golden record carried music and literature representing Earth. But unlike that record, which featured classical music, our hero was recording rock songs. This would matter in case he died one day. At least some record of who he was would remain. The girl watched from a distance while he played. It appeared that on the Booma's planet, there was no instrument like the guitar. Naturally, she was very curious. When he finished playing, she told him she had something important to say. The spacesuit was finally ready with the modifications he requested. So they went to see it. Our hero was anxious, and the scientists said it had taken a lot of work, but he finally succeeded. He had managed to enhance the suit for combat missions. His device began updating the suit's modifications. The engine built into the suit was working. With that, he stepped in to perform the initial tests. Just from feeling the movement, he realized he was stronger. After he entered, Ingress performed the final adjustments. Gradually, the suit started adapting to his body. Now it was more durable and had significantly greater strength. The man asked him to put on the helmet so he could breathe better. Our hero looked like Iron Man now. It wasn't that simple acrylic helmet anymore. This new armor could withstand attacks from alien creatures. They went outside to test it. After spotting a group of monsters, he prepared to shoot. The Geras were pack-moving monsters, so he would need to fire quickly. The weapon could fire 4 times, but he would only need 3 shots. The girl watched from afar to give support. His hand stayed steady thanks to the armor. After aiming carefully, he prepared to fire.